Okay, so welcome back to another video, and this video is going to be slightly different. So in the previous 3 videos I talked about fitness related stuff, but in this video I'm going to touch on something completely different, something that I get asked a lot: how I ended up being a data engineer considering my academic background in psychology. So the people who know me will probably already know that I am like a really tech savvy person. I basically grew up together with technology. My mom always says that when I was 3, I was already kind of talking about computers in my dreams. So it started at a pretty early age. Maybe I was 8 or something like that, and I already started like mocking up websites. I started coding in Visual Basic, then I moved on to Delphi. People kind of assumed that I would go into studying computer science at uni, but like computer science courses seemed to cover areas that I was not interested in at all. I never really saw myself as a software architect or software engineer. I saw myself as a kind of problem solver. There was something that I wanted to achieve, and my aim was to find the best way to achieve that. I kind of decided that I didn't want to do computer science as a degree. I didn't really have any idea like what I wanted to do if not that, so I kind of just went ahead and applied for social anthropology. I had no idea what that was. It was kind of reckless. I got into the University of St. Andrews to study social anthropology. I did that for 1 semester and I was like, there's no fucking way I'm doing this for any longer. This is fucking bullshit. I was kind of looking for other courses that I could kind of jump ship to. And one of my friends said, oh, you know, I'm doing psychology, it's kind of cool. So I was like, okay, I'm doing psychology now. I needed like a pretty mediocre average to change courses, which I easily achieved. And the next year I was doing psychology. Like while I was doing my degree, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do later on, but there was this opportunity for a summer internship, and I applied to it. I was rejected the first time, but then they had another internship and they remembered me, so they asked if I was still interested. I got rejected again, and the third time they asked me if I was still interested, we actually got funded. This summer internship was basically centered around survey data. We kind of had like 1-week sprints. Maybe 1 week they would say, we would like to have graphs of this, and the next week, okay, we would like to have the same graphs except filter out this like subset of data. My supervisors were used to using SPSS, and the data we had was so much and there were so many ways to analyze it, to plot it. I wanted to look into if there were better alternatives to SPSS. Obviously by then I have heard of R, the stats programming language. I would generate a plot. The lecturer would say, okay, we want a slightly altered version. I basically regenerated the plot in like a few minutes and that was done. And because they were really used to the SPSS workflow, they would give me a task that they assumed would take me 1 week. But because I was already like really speedy with this sort of scripted way of dealing with data, I would often do the weekly task the same day, and then I was done for the week. And I would be like, hey, I'm done. Here's the output. Do you want me to do anything? And they would be like, oh yeah, we'll get back to you. And they never got back to me. Instead of wasting the remainder of the week, I would spend 8 hours a day basically trying to skill myself up. So I found out about all these packages like Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, which are basically like stats libraries for Python. I had some prior experience developing websites in Python, so I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. It made sense to me, much more sense than R did. And that's basically how I spent my summer. At the end, I was kind of like speedy with dealing with pandas, data frames, just like ingesting data. For example, one of the stories I like to mention because it just really highlights the magnitude of difference between, let's say, using SPSS and Python. So one of the PIs ran like 250 regressions, and he had like a really difficult time interpreting the output, because like if you print out 250 regression outputs in SPSS, it really takes a long time to kind of go over it. And I was like, actually, I'm sure there's a faster way of doing it, just send me the output. So basically he exported the SPSS output into an HTML, and I wrote a script using Beautiful Soup and Python that kind of scraped the output of SPSS, ingested all the relevant information into an Excel file, and you could open the Excel file and instantly see which regressions were actually significant. So I did that in like maybe 3 hours, and by then he already spent days trying to do it. He was like, whoa. I'm like, yeah, this is the future. So I kind of spent my summer basically learning everything about Python and all these stats libraries. Initially, when I finished my undergrad, I was like, there's no fucking way I'm doing a master's. Like, I was really exhausted, mentally, emotionally, academically, basically in all senses you can imagine. But at the end of the summer, I was like, okay, I want to do a master's. And I looked into the master's, St. Andrews offered, and they had a course called Research Methods in Psychology. So I was like, yeah, sounds good. I was actually one of the 2 people doing that course because it was like so niche and everything. In one of the stats lectures, I don't remember how this came up, but the lecturer basically told this anecdote how he had a student who kind of went into big data, and she had a starting salary that was higher than starting lecturers coming straight out of uni. And I was like, whoa, okay, this sounds kind of cool. Like, I was never really a money-focused person, but, you know, it doesn't hurt to have it. And I was like, oh, you know, maybe I should look into doing that. It sounds kind of cool, like big data. You know, it's kind of like a buzzword, but whatever. It kind of got stuck in my head. I basically spent the rest of my master's course trying to find a PhD place. I wanted to do one in St. Andrews, but I was obviously open to other universities as well. So initially I was like really optimistic and hopeful. I was like, yeah, sure, I can get a place, you know. Maybe I don't get fully funded, but you know, I can sort it out. I can get some scholarship, blah, blah, blah. Well, and people were like, oh yeah, it's like really difficult. And I was like, oh, it will be fine, it will be fine. Like, things have always worked out for me, like in a really good way, my whole life. So I basically spent the entire first semester trying to sort out my PhD place. Like, even when I was on holiday in fucking Cuba, I was writing my research proposal, dealing with all the applications. But at the beginning of 2019, it kind of became clear that I was not going to get a place. Like, St. Andrews never replied to me. Other unis I applied to didn't reply. So I was like, yeah, whatever, I guess I'll just get a job, you know, like normal people. So I started to kind of brainstorm what kind of jobs I could do. And this is what is really interesting in terms of cultural mindsets of jobs and skills. And in Hungary, there is this very static kind of career path. You go to uni, you study computer science, and you get a job as a computer scientist or as a software engineer. You go to uni, study engineering, and you get an engineering job. You go to uni, study psychology, and you get a job in McDonald's. So basically, whatever you study defines the kind of jobs you can get. Now, in other countries, this is completely different. Companies don't really expect you to have the same kind of degree that the job is about. So let's say you want to do software engineering, you don't necessarily need a software engineering degree and so forth. And this is kind of like a difficult concept to grasp for many people. Like, whenever I tell my Hungarian friends that I'm working as a data engineer, they're like, how come you were studying psychology? Like, how did you end up at this job? So I kind of like sat down with myself and I was like, okay, let's see what sort of skills I have, what sort of skills I've gained throughout my undergrad, throughout my internship, throughout my master's, and let's see what I can do with that. So I was like, okay, I'm fairly analytical, which I've always been. I'm fairly good with computers, I'm really tech savvy. I'm good with stats, I guess. I can do SPSS, R, Python, all these kind of things. So I was like, okay, let's see what sort of jobs I could get with these skills. And I just basically Googled a mixture of these. Most jobs that came up were data analyst, data scientist. So I started applying to these jobs. Literally anything I could find. I applied to over 100 jobs, probably 200. Most of them I've never heard back. Some of them rejected me. Some of them kind of invited me to these stupid psychometry bullshit exercises. Like, if you've done a psychometry test, you know what I'm talking about. And, you know, after I've done 4 or 5 of those, I was like, do I really want to work for a company that puts me through this shit? And I was like, hell no, hell no. So I was kind of lost. I was really, really lost. I went into this whole job hunt fairly optimistic, but at the end, it was basically like the middle of July. I was kind of freaking out. My degree was going to end at the end of September and I had absolutely no plan, basically. I was completely clueless as for what I was going to do. I signed up to all these like recruiters, recruitment agencies, and one day I got an email from, not sponsored, but you know, I might as well credit them because they actually kind of helped me. The Graduate Recruitment Bureau, basically saying, oh, we are looking for graduates who have experience with Python, Pandas, Matplotlib. I replied with my CV, and the next day this recruiter called me and she was like, okay, I had a look at your CV. What's your feeling about this job? And I'm like, yeah, this job really sounds like exactly what I'm looking for. It sounds like they're looking for me. So there was this chemistry already, and she was like, yeah, I had the same feeling, and also I see that you were doing some music. This is actually a company that deals with audio. That's probably going to work out in your favor. I'm like, oh my God, like a company that does all these things I'm interested, all these things I'm good at. Fuck yeah. And a few days later, she got back to me. They wanted to phone interview me. The phone interview went like really well. And then they invited me to a face-to-face interview in Cambridge. So I kind of drove down from Scotland to Cambridge. By the way, the drive down the south is beautiful. So I kind of like dressed up in the nicest possible way, you know, suit, tie, nice shoes, everything. And I walk into this office of this startup and people are dressed in like the most casual clothes, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, I may have overdressed slightly. The interview went pretty well, except for one part where I completely froze down. The office was amazing, the people seemed to be really friendly, and the whole vibe of the company was just, it blew me away. I completely fell in love with it. As I was driving home, I was like, there's absolutely no way they will want me. This is literally the only interview I have, and I love it, and it's going to hurt so much when they reject me. Preparing myself for reality, which was basically that they wouldn't want me, because why would they want me? Yeah, I didn't really hear back from them for what seemed like an eternity. And then I got a call from the recruiter and she was like, oh yeah, they want to have another phone interview when the HR person comes back, but so far so good. So I was like, oh my God, seriously? I had the phone interview with the company. They were really nice again. Then we went back and forth between the recruiter and myself. And one day I was literally checking my Apple Watch like every 5 minutes for an email because I was expecting a response from the company. And maybe at like 5:30 on a Friday, I get an email from the recruiter and she's like, yeah, they just sent me the offer. And I was like, oh my God. I, I was blown away. Like I had a pretty rough 2019. It was fucking horrible year until this point. And, that just basically made you can say it made my year. I fell in love with the job. They had like a really nice offer in terms of salary. All the perks were amazing. So I was like, yeah, yeah, yes, please. So she was like, yeah, I thought you would be happy. I'm like, of course I'm fucking happy. Are you kidding me? I literally submitted my dissertation on a Friday, packed up all the necessary things, drove down to an Airbnb and started on Monday. It was very fast-paced, but it was nice in the sense that I didn't lose momentum. So I guess the moral of the story is that a career path is not necessarily as straightforward as you would expect. Like you can start off with a social anthropology university application and end up working as a data engineer. There is no written rule. It all comes down to the skills you have, the passions you have, and how well you can prove those. I had the skills because I was willing to go the extra mile during my internship and actually learn new things on purpose. And yeah, I guess it paid out. So if I were to give advice, I guess just try to be as well versed in as many things as possible. So one question I get all the time is whether I'm gonna do a PhD eventually or not. And the answer is pretty obvious from my point of view. And it goes like this: absolutely not. But let me reverse the question. Why would I want to waste 4 years of my life potentially ending up with some mental illness only to become a doctor? I would need to do a postdoc afterwards, and after that I could maybe get a lectureship and earn the same amount of money I'm earning now. Why would I put myself through that when I can just wake up in the morning, go to the gym, spend 8 hours of fun at my workplace, come home, relax, and then go to sleep? So what does a data engineer do? Basically, we are responsible for all stages of data management. So we record audio data, we ingest it, edit it, upload it to the database, and we are responsible for the data being good data, basically. The reason I love this job is that there are new challenges every day, and I think that's really important because it forces you to learn new things every day, and that's kind of my life motto, that I want to go to bed smarter than how I got out of bed, and this job really allows me to do that. Thanks for sticking all this way. This was a slightly different video from the usual. And this was one of the topics that I have been wanting to cover for a very long time. Expect more content like this. If you watched the video all this long, please like the video, subscribe, comment if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.